What is up? I want to talk to you guys, especially my fellow Americans, about an issue that you guys are facing and a lot of people don't know and no one really talks about in mainstream news. From my perception, I don't watch mainstream news, so what do I know? But anyways, here it is. It's companies buying large amounts of real estate and deciding to rent it and or sell it. But it's not even the people that are buying and selling that's the issue. It's more of the people that are buying and renting that's the issue. Now you got to listen to my point, why it's a problem, and why I think that it demands major legislation to restructure this. So, everybody understands that the beauty of capitalism includes supply and demand, and prices tend to regulate themselves, right? The problem with all these companies buying up real estate and then deciding to rent it is they interfere, they leverage their wealth to interfere with how capitalism is supposed to work just across the board, right? Capitalism works when there's not a particular group in control of much of the resources. Whenever there is one particular group that controls the major resources, they throw off the beauty or the cycle of capitalism, right? Hear me out. The perfect exam is the waterworks system, okay? It rains, it hits the ground, it evaporates, forms clouds, and then it rains again, right? But whenever you start storing up water behind dams, or you just start collecting the water, what starts to happen is, at some point somewhere else, now there's drought. And the drought is because the water is no longer in the main area. You have it hoarded in underground chambers or whatever. Now the water cycle no longer works the way it's supposed to work. So, back to the housing scenario. What happens is, when individual owners want to buy a home, or want to sell a home, they put it on the market, someone else will buy it. On average, the average person sells their home, every 7 years? On average. It changes from time to time, especially right now. A lot of homeowners don't want to sell, especially if you had a low interest mortgage, you don't want to sell. But on average, they say it's about 7 years. Look it up. So, what happens is, the price and the availability and the inventory is related to the very idea that most people are going to sell their homes. It's going to enter the market every so often, right? Like almost every 7 years on average. And that helps keep a nice stable supply of homes on the market, which keeps a nice stable pricing structure, so to speak. When these companies buy up the homes, they don't act like a regular consumer. The homes don't go back on the market to sell for cheap most often. Or in this current strategy that's happening, they buy up the homes and then they rent it. That's what they want to do. Now it's not hitting the market, so what happens is you expect inventory to contract. Not a lot of homes are going to be in the market because they're buying them up and they're keeping it as rentals. What happens right there is, first of all, when these few companies own a majority of the rentals or a large portion of the rentals, they start setting the standard price. And there's nobody to really compete with as much. They're setting the prices. So now they're able to sell it or rent it when, they buy and rent it. Now they're able to rent it as ridiculously high prices. And you almost have no choice because they and their competitors own a majority of the rentals. But even their competitors are in on the same game. So their competitors aren't trying to undersell the rent. They know that there's enough people that are desperate that they can all set their prices high and they're still going to get customers. They're just competing to get the homes as cheap as possible. They're not competing to rent these homes as cheap as possible. There is a difference. So now we have low inventory because these mega companies are just buying it. Me and you can't afford the home, okay? Because we're not a mega corporation. These mega corporations are buying the home in cash, right? 9 times out of 10. Outbidding us. So now regular people can't get the homes. Regular people are now forced to rent. And now regular people are having to rent from the very person who outbid them. And here's why this is a vicious cycle. The company outbids you, gets rental money, jacks up the cost, feeding them to have more money in the first place, and then they go out and keep outbidding people. And it's an engine that gets stronger and stronger as it collects momentum. So no matter what, as this goes on, regular people like you and I continue to get priced out of this scenario. You see? Now we're reaching a final point. Back to, the companies getting together. This is also why oil, look this up. Oil is so expensive. Before OPEC was established, many oil companies used to compete with themselves, okay? And when they competed with themselves, they would sell the oil for cheap. Then somebody got wise and said, instead of us competing to sell each other the oil for cheap, why don't we all agree on set costs? And by agreeing on a set cost, we'll actually make more money because we can all sell it higher and they have no choice but to buy from us. That is what's happening. We're getting conglomerates in real estate. Now, many times you're not allowed to collude, especially in real estate. I can only speak on the real estate commission structure, but you're not allowed to collude. For example, real estate agents aren't allowed to say, hey, by the way, this is our commission, and everybody needs to do that. That doesn't happen. But what does happen is the norm starts to be established, but you never say it, right? And I'm speaking about how these properties go. Because if John is selling the homes or renting the homes at $4,000 a month, and he's making profit, the other person, and I say John Incorporated because it's a bunch of corporations. When John Incorporated is selling their rentals for $3,000, the other guy isn't like, oh, so we should sell ours for $2,900 a month, right? So we could compete with them. What they're doing is this. Oh, the John Incorporated group, they're selling theirs for $3,000. They're renting theirs for $3,000 a month. I mean, $4,000 a month. $4,000 a month. That's the figure I said. Anyways, we're gonna do the same thing. They're making all that profit doing it on $4,000 a month. Let's do the same thing. You know what? We might be able to get away with it by doing $450 a month. If they're doing $4,000, let's do $450. Let's see. It'll sit on the home. It'll sit on the market for a month. We bought it cash. And if it doesn't sell or it doesn't go under rent, we'll lower it back to what they are doing. But because everyone is so desperate, they put it on the market for $50 higher than the competitor, still gets rented, and their competitor is like, oh snap, they're renting it higher than us and they succeeded. You know what we're gonna do? We are also going to raise our costs. When it's regular people like you and I that buy these rentals or buy homes, we don't have the conglomerate power that they do. So we're not going to try, for the most part, to really go above market. I mean, we might, because people are just greedy, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work as well because there's too many independent people, and there's a desperate person over there and a desperate person over there. There's desperate buyers and there's desperate sellers. That is good. That's balance. So you could try to sell your home or rent your home way above market, but because there's enough desperate sellers on the market, they will undercut you. So you're stuck doing fair market value. What I'm trying to tell you is companies, when enough of them own the properties, they don't have to do fair market value because they don't have to deal with as much desperate people because they are not desperate. They can afford to hold out way more longer than the average Joe who just, gets one property or two properties and they're trying to rent it out. They often have a mortgage on top of that, so they have to rent it out, and they have to rent it out at just enough to break even with their mortgage. There's a whole bunch of complicated factors, but when you're a mega corporation and you're buying this cash, you don't have to deal with that. So it's a growing problem, and I think we should regulate the number of properties an individual or companies or a web of companies should be able to own. Personally, it varies, but I don't think it should be greater than 8. I can even stretch it to 10. You're like, oh my God, 10 is a lot. Guys, when it comes to the average middle class family, even if you make $1 million a year, you're gonna spend your money. You're gonna go golfing, you're gonna spend, remember the rain cycle. One person owning about 8 or 10 properties that they're renting, they're gonna have their property manager there, they're gonna have a maintenance crew that they hire, they're gonna go golfing, they're gonna go out to dinner, they're gonna spend their money, put something in the stock market, and they accumulate a wealth of like $5-10 million. That doesn't really take a lot out of the cycle, and they contribute. Okay. What happens though, when you have people that have the millions and millions and millions of dollars that are participating in this same game, they got 100 properties, they got millions of dollars, and they don't necessarily inject that into the economy as a a higher middle class person does, because they have so much of it, it just gets hoarded. It just gets put in banks and or assets and just sits there. Doesn't really feed into the economy. That's why, again, it's not really, and I know I'm going off on a tangent, but when it comes to this property thing, it's not the average investor that we're having issues with. It's the mega corporations. And it's almost always the mega corporation. The one guy that owns like 5 businesses in town or whatever, he's great. The one gal that owns 5 doctor offices, she is great. The one gal that owns 2,000 doctor's offices, they're the ones now that have so much power that now they can start regulating the rates, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's my video. It's a policy you guys should look out for. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are. Comment below. I look forward to chatting with you guys. Later.